Hey, what's up? We are here in the flesh. It's Tuesday, July 28th. 110 degrees outside, but 70 degrees in here. Feels good. This is Loni Jorgensen. Hello, Loni.
Hello.
Tell us what grade you in?
I'm going to be a freshman this year.
What school are you not going to?
I am not going to. Ooh.
Well,
right there.
Give me, like,
that was a trick question.
Yeah, I
What school do you attend but not going to?
Oh, well, I'm going to go to Catalina Plus High School, but I'm not going to actually be attending.
Emily, hi.
Hi.
You're a
Sophomore this year.
You could have answered a lot of ways. You could
I
say,
could have. I am
I
a
am
human
a blonde-headed person. I am a
girl. I'm
girl.
blonde-headed.
I am 5'9".
Around there. I'm 5'8", actually.
Thanks for joining us. And then last but not least, the man on my left, your right, is
Evan Grant. Howdy, y'all.
Farmer Evan Grant. Hey, we're going to play we have all done some research. My research was better. We have found some outrageous, amazing, hilarious, whatever you want to say, news headlined articles. All right. So we're going to kind of go one by one. We're going to share our news headline, and then we're going to vote for each other, and we're going to see who wins at the end of this. So this is called news headlines. Really funny, really awesome, really. What's the alliteration, Loni?
Hardly happy, happening, hyper headlines.
Yes, if you can hear that.
Are we doing multiple rounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, multiple rounds.
Oh.
Okay, Loni, you lead us off from round one. Ready?
Okay. A nuclear explosion could be a disaster.
Could be.
It could be. So
Might not.
it's not necessarily implying that it would. They're saying it could be, or even might be, but that's not a
But
guarantee.
not definitive.
Yeah, so they don't.
If there was a nuclear disaster in outer space, would it be a disaster?
I mean,
Yes. Radiation.
What if it was like on Mars? Would it be a disaster for us?
Maybe.
Maybe our eyes.
Maybe that's what
maybe
the
our
article
eyes
was
would
talking
have
about.
disaster in them because we would see it because it's so.
Maybe.
I think I'd just be like, oh, it's so pretty.
Well, you could see Mars, you have the stars sometimes at night.
It's just
All right, that was a good one, Loni. Emily, let's see if yours is better.
Midget sues grocer, cites belittling remarks.
I don't know what to say. That is funny. Well done, Emily. I hope no one is offended.
I didn't
I hope
think
we're not
about
banned
that.
on YouTube.
Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. Hey, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. It really happened. Okay, mine is Oregon police remind residents, do not call 911 if you run out of toilet paper. Come on, that's funny. People were actually calling 911. Look, they said, then they offered different options for people. They said sailors used old rope and anchor lines soaked in salt water. Ancient Romans used sea sponge on a stick, also soaked in salt water. We say, we are a coastal town. We have an abundance of salt water available. Seashells were also used.
Worst comes to worst, there's also sandpaper.
Magazines.
So
Sand.
next time you pick up a seashell, just think about someone wiping it on their butt.
Looks like you copy and pasted the entire article.
Yeah, I did,
Why did you
man.
copy and paste
That
the
was
entire
quality.
article?
That was
For
quality.
details.
March 17th, so it's a little old. But... Okay, Evan.
Driver bribes cop with sweet potato. I don't know how you do that. Like,
I mean,
I don't know what.
Do you know what state that was in?
No, probably Florida. But
All right.
No, maybe the cop was hungry that day. He was,
Yeah.
He was willing to take anything.
I would
just eat a raw sweet potato.
Okay.
Nutritious.
Let's point on 3 to see the vote on who you think was the best, not yourself. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's 3 for Emily. Man. All right, Emily takes round 1. You lead round 2.
The
Ready,
midgets
set?
for the win. Okay, round 2. Hospitals resort to hiring doctors.
What?
That's what it says.
So what did they hire before that?
Actors.
Maybe.
You didn't read the article?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. Okay. Mine is Farmer finds prosthetic leg dropped from skydiver.
What?
Hold on. So he was skydiving.
An amputee who lost his prosthetic leg while skydiving was reunited with a limb thanks to a sharp-eyed Vermont farmer who found it intact among his
What if that
crops.
smacked someone in the head?
I wouldn't want to be. Wait.
Can you imagine how embarrassing that would
Look,
be? You land,
Look,
you're
the
like,
guy
y'all see
who
my
lost
leg?
it, he said,
Oh
my
my
adrenaline was so
goodness.
high and I was so excited that I didn't realize I had lost it.
How do you wouldn't be able to stand?
Yeah, you'd be like, I did
You'd
it.
be like,
You'd like parachute down and be like,
You'd be like,
One-legged. Okay.
Um,
Gotta be an amazing gymnast.
scientists to kill ducks to see why they're dying.
Oh my goodness.
So scientists are killing ducks to see
Because you
why
gotta
they're dying.
open them up and see what they're infected with. But then you just
No,
kill
what's
more
wrong with
ducks.
it?
But it depends on how they killed them. Because what if they poison them? Then they'd be like, oh, it's poison, but then they were the ones who
They're
did
the
it.
ones that
So
poison
you
them.
never know.
It's the water.
They're not very
Okay,
It's always
Lonnie,
water.
what's your round 2?
Okay. Alton attorney accidentally sues himself.
How,
Who?
Alton the attorney, I don't know.
Alton?
Yeah.
who
That was
names
the
their
name?
kid Alton?
I knew an Alton one time.
Yeah,
That's
he
the
sued
thing you-
himself.
Alton the attorney sued himself.
Yeah, I'm not
What's
sure
the
how
thing you
that would
took
go.
out of that?
Maybe he had multiple
Who's
personality
the kid
disorder.
Alton?
Where he was also the criminal and the attorney.
Wow.
You just commit a crime and then you're like, no, that was
I
not
got
right.
myself yes.
Okay, so we got prosthetic leg, we got sweet potato.
No, let me go back.
Oh, yeah, what was
A
your
scientist
It was the
killing
duck.
ducks.
Oh,
to
the
find
killing
out why they're
ducks.
dying.
attorney suing himself and
Mine was the hospital.
hospital
Hospital.
doctors.
Hiring
doctors.
doctors.
Okay,
Awesome.
ready? 1. I gotta think.
I had to think too.
2. Still thinking. 3.
What
Whoa!
is that?
No one
Wow.
liked mine. Man.
It was
Sorry.
the ducks.
All right.
1
to 1 to 0 to 0. Lana, we have no chance. These guys still have a chance to win. We are fighting for not being in last place right now. If one of us wins, the other's in last place. Okay? So this is the last round. I'll lead it off. Ready?
Oh boy.
Man, this isn't really funny, but this is cool. Okay? This was July 24th. Just happened. Breaking news, everybody. Ready. Man keeps promise made in 1992 and splits $22 million lottery winnings with friend. Okay, they had a handshake bet in 1992. If I ever win the lottery, I will split it with you.
That's not a bet.
And
That's more like an agreement.
That's just an
agreement.
agreement.
A mutual.
It was a handshake agreement, though. Yeah, and he did it in the year 2020 when they. So that was. What's the math there?
What,
38,
was that 1999?
28 years
Okay, well,
ago.
72.
Oh, 1992
years ago.
2002. So yeah, that's
Count
like
up.
so that's
Isn't that
not
cool?
like.
I guess.
Maybe
Yeah.
Y'all don't think that's cool? I think that's
28 years.
I
That was
find that to be
breaking
very,
If I was
very.
the
Breaking
friend, then
news.
I'd be like, yeah, that's
There
cool.
was like
Breaking
a 1 in a
news.
million chance that would actually.
Yeah, for real.
Children invited to eat pizza with poo.
Pooh Bear.
Yeah, poo.
Oh.
P-O-O-H.
I thought you meant pizza
Um,
with poo on top of it.
So,
same.
Wolf
Like,
Park
it's
Great
already-
Hollow Lake will host Pooh Bear. That's all it says. Nothing else. It just says they will host Pooh Bear. I'm assuming that means they're having Pooh Bear there, and they can eat with Pooh Bear. But you're kind of
You
scared.
said Pooh Bear there.
Pooh Bear?
What?
Okay.
Okay.
Pooh Pizza. Lonnie, what you got?
This one's quite ironic, actually. All right. Safety meeting ends in accident. So, by this, they basically were gonna have a safety meeting about, none other than safety, and it ended in a horrid accident.
Do you know what it was?
I don't.
But it was freaky and it was
Do
horrid.
we know they were meeting about safety?
Yes.
No, or were
safety.
or were
It was
they
a
meeting about
safety-
something
it was a
about
meeting about
something that
safety.
isn't?
It's a safety meeting.
So they were gonna have a meeting
I
about
feel
something
like
else.
that's an Office episode. You guys
Yeah.
watch The Office?
Yes,
Yeah, it was
I've
like-
watched
Office.
all 9
Yeah.
seasons at least like.
Are you
Same.
sure you
At
didn't
least
get that
one
from
time.
an Office episode?
No, I am
That's
actually
like
serious.
when Dwight lit the building
Yeah.
On fire, and
or
he's like,
something.
everybody fire, remember your procedures.
Remember the procedures!
Wait, which one? Because there was 2 fire episodes.
We can talk about that
When
later.
Dwight
Emily,
lights
what's the
it on
last
fire.
headline that you got?
Deanna was still alive hours before she died.
No way.
Exactly.
Wait, who?
Deanna. Princess
Deanna.
Deanna.
Oh, Diana.
Diana?
It's
I don't
Diana.
know.
Oh, yeah, Diana.
So that was
Diana.
Princess
Diana.
Diana.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, mine was breaking news. Yours is like,
Okay.
I was in middle school when that happened. But Diana was alive hours before she died. That's a
I think
good
the biggest
headline.
thing I'm thinking about listening to all of these is who writes these?
Exactly.
Who
So wait.
votes for these? We're about to.
Wait, go
Oh,
over
wait,
the.
okay, I need to think.
Lottery,
Poo
Pooh Bear, Poo Pizza,
It was a safety meeting, a died in an accident.
safety,
No, happy-
freaky, horrid accident,
Horrid.
and Emily's, which
Yeah.
was Princess Diana
Diana.
was
Yeah.
alive hours before she died.
No. It's
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Yes, I got. Thank you, Loni. I didn't
I'm
lose.
telling you, vote
Oh,
for
you
this
got a vote
time.
too, though. Emily got you a vote. But who wins? Emily?
I'm pointing at a line.
You're pointing at Loni. Loni wins! No! That means I lose.
Yeah.
You guys all tie for the win.
Hey, let's go.
Okay, real quick. I got a number between 1 and 10 in my head. Whoever's closest is the grand champion. Ready, go.
7.
3.
You stole my number. 5.
It was 7.
Let's go!
Oh, what the heck?
On the dime!
So, you know.
Always 3 or 7. Okay. Wow. Man, that was fun. News headlines. Look them up.
Grand champion.
News headline grand champion, Evan Grant, everybody.
Oh.
Okay, so we are jumping back into our Habakkuk, Habby,
I wrote that.
our study
I'm
down.
happy.
All right. We're in chapter 3 today, and to give you a quick recap, all right, we are living right now in a season of disappointment and hurts. I think we'd all agree to some extent that there's disappointment around. There's chaos. There's confusion in our world right now. And so what do? How do we respond? Habakkuk shows us, the whole book of Habakkuk, in the midst of hard times, we can lean into God. God can be trusted. All right? So that's kind of the big overview of Habakkuk. Chapter 1, he's distressed, he's confused, there's sin, there's Babylon. What are we going to do? God, are you there? God, do you see this? Then God answers, and he says, hey, you never believe what I'm going to do. The Babylons are going to come judge you for your sin. Habakkuk says, what? Why? How? This isn't fair. God, you shouldn't do this. Please don't. Maybe he doesn't say you shouldn't do this, but he says, I understand. I know you, but I don't understand what you're doing, is what Habakkuk's response is. And then God says, he responds to that by saying, hey, don't worry. I'm going to judge the Babylonians too. All right? And then, now it's Habakkuk's turn, and that's where we're going to be today. Okay? And so Habakkuk responds again in chapter 3. This is a prayer. This is a song that Habakkuk is praying. It's a song that it's theorized that in the Old Testament, in the New Testament church even, maybe they sung this song together. But the big idea is, in light of God's past faithfulness, we can be assured of his present and future faithfulness. All right, so that's the big idea here in chapter 3 that we'll be diving in today. All right, so let's talk about our minds and remembering. Are you guys good at remembering?
Depends on the thing I'm supposed to remember.
Remembering. Okay, you guys, this is fun. Fun fact. I'm here with 3 babies of the family. 2 older siblings, and you all have 2 older siblings.
Wow.
Whoa.
Wow.
This is crazy. Okay, so, have you guys ever been forgotten by a family member before?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us where, Loni. Tell us by who.
So it was a lot of people. So it was my birthday, right? You don't think anything could go wrong. I mean, I am the birthday girl after all. And so I had been playing a game upstairs in my bedroom that I had gotten for my birthday. And you know, like on the day of your birthday, you have a family prayer, like thank you that she was born on this day, before dinner. And I was upstairs in my room, happy, you know, as a 9-year-old would.
What were you doing in your room?
I think I was playing a game or playing chess.
Playing chess with who?
Myself.
You avoided that detail.
I was at chess club at the time. Well, so then they all pray for me without me being in my room. So they were all praying and I was not present at the time at my own birthday party. And, then my sister comes up and she says, Loni, we all prayed without you. Where have you been? And I was like, I've been up here for the past 30 minutes. So there's my story. I was prayed without on my
Yay,
birthday.
birthday girl. Emily, have you ever been forgotten?
Yeah. My mom forgot me at basketball practice and didn't pick me up until 2 hours later.
And you were all by yourself.
Yeah.
The basketball practice that never happened, you told us, right?
Right, it didn't happen. I forgot that it wasn't happening that day. And so I showed up and I was like, I should go.
I bet your older brother was never forgotten.
Probably not.
Evan, you been forgotten?
Yeah, I was at school in the 8th grade after track, and my sister was supposed to pick me up, and that didn't happen. And so I was sitting there from 2:45 to, not 2:45, I was a little later than that, but 2:45 to 7:30, and I was just.
And you got home and you're probably like, guys, did you miss me? Like, where'd you
I
come
was
from?
getting stabbed in the butt by a rock I was sitting on. It was horrible.
I have not, I don't think, forgotten any of my kids yet,
Yeah,
but I'm sure it'll happen.
that's a big
Yeah.
yet.
I have a hard time remembering their birthdays. I know, it's bad.
God.
Like
You
someone
were
asked
there.
me, the other day we actually had friends over and they have kids they have 4 kids, kind of like ours, age-wise. And I was trying to figure out who was older, their 3rd kid or our 3rd kid. And I called my Cooper. I said, he's 2. How old is your kid? And my wife looked at me and was like, he's 3. He was 3 a year ago. So, oops. But we stink at remembering, right? The Israelites, if you look in the Old Testament, they continually forgot, right? It's like God does something awesome, and they're like, yay, God, we'll worship you forever. We'll always be obedient to you. And then, a little bit later, they forget. They're worshiping idols, and and it's over and over again. It's that cycle. We do the same thing in our lives. We forget the promises of God. We forget the faithfulness of God. And so Habakkuk, what he's going to show us here in chapter 3 is that in hard times, there's a stinking fly buzzing all around us, causing us a hard time. But in hard times, in difficulties, we are to remember God's faithfulness. All right? So that's kind of where we're going right now. All right? So, verse 2, Evan, start us off. What do we got going on? Habakkuk chapter 3, verse 2. Oh, Emily, you read it.
I have heard all about you, Lord. I am filled with awe by your amazing works. In this time of our deep need, help us again as you did in years gone by. And in your anger, remember your mercy.
Awesome. So going back to remembering, right? We struggle to remember who God is. And I think that's why God gives us passages like this in the scripture, where we see Habakkuk reminding himself of who God is. He's praying this to God. He's singing this to God, sitting at the feet of God, rehearsing his faithfulness. All right? Because it's not something we naturally do. And so we have this as our guideline, as our pattern, as our model to follow, right? Verse 2, right away, he says, Lord, that's Yahweh, all right? Yahweh was the personal name of God. And so Habakkuk might feel kind of crazy. He might feel scared. He might feel like everything's spinning out of control, yet he knows he's secure with God, right? He still has this intimate relationship with God. He still has this personal, God is personally invested in him. God is personally committed to Habakkuk, all right? And he's basically saying in verse 2, he says, I know I can count on you. I know I can trust on you. I know that you care. He's reassuring himself. God does not forget about us. God is not absent-minded. God doesn't abandon ship because he's done it years ago. He's proved himself. He's helped people years ago that Habakkuk's referring to that we'll get in just a little bit. So despite Habakkuk's feeling, he knows that God is for him. All right, Loni, how might we be experiencing that right now?
So, in modern day, we know, for us Christians, we know that God is in control of everything. And like Romans 5:28, for example, it says, "And we know for those who love God, all things work together for good, and those who are called according to His purpose." So we can know that basically we know that He's in control, and that no matter what, like He knows that we have this whole epidemic for a purpose and for a reason. So for us, we can just pray that He shows mercy on us, and
Right.
so we just know like it's for a purpose. So.
Yeah, it certainly feels like the world's spinning out of control, right?
Yeah.
And like I think we can be discouraged, we can be bummed, we can be overwhelmed. That's our feeling. But we know, like exactly like you said, we know God is in control. And so in the difficulties, in our trials, in our struggles, Habakkuk gives us this model, like run to God, not away from God. You know, even complain to God, like he was doing earlier in the book, not about God, right? Like Habakkuk is going to God time and time again. He's not moving away. He's not talking about God to other people. He's going to God, all right? He was faithful in the past, and he knows he'll be faithful again because God is never changing, right? God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So Habakkuk starts out in chapter 3 by rehearsing God's faithfulness, and then he's going to behold his judgment, okay? So, Evan, if you were to sum up verses 3 through 12, which, if you got your Bibles, we're not going to read it all. I'd encourage you, like, maybe jump online and read the Message version or the New Living Translation version, because 3 through 12 can get a little bogged down if you're reading, like, the ESV or something.
Pause the video and read it.
Pause the video, yeah. But how would you sum it up, Evan?
No, but he's kind of like recapping, he's running it back. He's just like recalling, I guess, the faithfulness of God as he rescued like Israel, and whether it was from other people or from themselves, like during the Exodus or post-Exodus.
Yeah, as they're going into the promised land and stuff. Yeah, you're exactly right. So it's almost like what you said a phrase earlier, like play the tape or rewind the footage or something.
Run it back.
Run it back. Yeah, he's running it back in his head. He's reminding himself, here's what God has done, and he's proved himself faithful. And so there's some really powerful imagery that he starts out in verses 3 through 7. Emily, read. Well, verse 3, he says, hey, God's on his way. Like, God's coming. God's coming. God's coming. So we always have this assurance that God is coming. He's not going to leave us. But then verse 4, Emily, read that for us.
His coming is as brilliant as the sunrise. Rays of light flash from his hands, where his awesome power is hidden.
Boom. Super cool imagery, right? Flashing light, brilliant as the sunrise, hidden power in his hands. Loni, what does verse 6 say?
When he stops, the earth shakes. When he looks, the nations tremble. He shatters the everlasting mountains and levels the eternal hills. He is the eternal one.
Boom. That is so cool, right? So powerful imagery, like no one and nothing can stop this God, right? He is bigger, he is greater, he is beyond any struggle we might have, any hardship we might have. He is so beyond that, all right? And so in the midst of Habakkuk's confusion about God and his own worries and his concerns, he actually starts worshiping God for who he is, right? He's rehearsing God's power, his might, his glory. Sometimes we like to just run back our own struggles. Like, we're going through a hard time and we just keep replaying that in our head. Oh, this stinks. This stinks because of this. This stinks because of that. This stinks because, Habakkuk, instead of doing that, he starts reminding himself, who is God? How great is God? How worthy is God? How powerful is God? Okay? He's zooming out from his struggle. He's in a big struggle, but he's zooming out and he's looking at who is in control of all this, right? This is a micro little thing in the grand scheme of everything God's got going on. I like in Isaiah, it talks about how God hung the stars like tents, how he holds the waters of the earth in the palm of his hand, and we can feel so overwhelmed by things in life. Yet God is so much greater, so much more powerful. And so that's what Habakkuk's doing. Evan, when you pray, when you're praying to God in difficulties and tough times, how do you pray with expectation and confidence in God?
Well, I think part of it is just you have to understand that God has like complete control and the total ability to complete like what you're asking Him to help you with, and so like you can have confidence in the fact that He's able to help you, and you know He's able to help you.
Right. Yeah, it's I think it's one thing to say, like timidly, almost to go to God timidly and say, God, can you please help me? Would you be able to please, help me navigate this situation? It's another thing to say, hey God, you hung the stars in the heavens, you hold the sun in its place, you're keeping the earth in orbit, you make my heart beat without me doing anything about it. Like, you are powerful, you are mighty. God, I need you right now. That's a expectant prayer, not a timid prayer that says, God, I don't really trust you and I don't really know you could do this, but if you can, that'd be cool. So yeah, you're exactly right. And that's what Habakkuk's doing. And then verses 8 through 12, it focuses on God's conquest. All right, so we start getting this imagery of God bringing judgment on Egypt and anyone in the promised land that's standing in the way of God's people. God is angry at the enemies of Israel, um, and He's not going to accept His people being bullied. All right, and so then He personifies different parts of creation. He personifies the mountains in verse 10. Lonnie, what does He say there in verse 10?
The mountains saw you and writhed.
Yes, ride. Emily, if you were to ride, what would it look like? No, I'm just kidding. What does it mean to ride?
Okay, so it's like imagery. For example, when you pull a worm apart, it's like still wiggling and stuff. It's like what just happened, and like
Do you regularly pull worms apart?
I just went fishing last week.
Right. And so writhing is like to be, think of someone or an animal like a worm or a snake or something, like twisting and turning and just in severe pain and agony. All right. Like, that's the imagery. And so you have powerful mountains that are writhing in pain is the language that Habakkuk uses at the sight of God bringing down justice on Egypt. Okay, so mountains are crumbling and twisting and turning and writhing because God's might is so great. He goes on to describe some of the events like crossing the Red Sea, the power of the water there, and all that was on display by God. He talks about he mentions the moon stood still, the sun and the moon stood still in the sky. Like, this is such a sight to behold, God's power on display, that they're like frozen, right? The sun and the moon are frozen. They're like, holy smokes, God is so powerful. His judgment, His conquest is so great. So when you face struggles, right, whatever struggles we might be facing, Habakkuk, we follow in Habakkuk's step, all right? Do you realize who is with you? Do you realize who is on your side, right? God is with us. God is on our side. The creation itself pauses and trembles and quakes when God is on the move, okay? So Habakkuk remembers God's faithfulness. Then he beholds His judgment. He plays it back, right? He plays back the tape, and then he witnessed God's deliverance in verses 13 through 15. Evan, can you read those for us?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a picture of a God who delivers. He's shown up and He is rescuing His people. And so Habakkuk knows, like, nobody messes with us without God's sign off, signature on it. God is always there, and our enemies ultimately don't stand a chance against God. Okay, Habakkuk is witnessing the deliverance. He's playing it back and witnessing the deliverance of his people in Egypt, and he knows that God will deliver ultimately the people of Israel and Judah from the Babylonians. Right? Doesn't know when, but it's going to happen. Um, So we know that, the enemies of Habakkuk was the Babylonians. The enemy of Israel before that was Egypt. Who were we once enemies with?
Well, I mean, like, okay, at one point, so in Romans 5:10, it says, for while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son. Much more, now that we are reconciled, shall we be saved by his life. So, God, basically.
Yeah.
Before we were saved.
So we were once enemies to God because of our sin, but God delivers us from that, right? And so he puts Jesus in our place, where Jesus faces God's wrath, we get God's blessing. And so when we're struggling, this is really cool. When we're struggling, when we're discouraged, we run back the tape, right? We play it back. How do you say it?
Run it back.
Run it back, okay? When we're discouraged, run it back. We got to remember that God has been faithful over and over again. He's been faithful to us in Jesus. And so no matter what we're going through, we can say, God, I know you are with me. I know that you are on my side. I can see that you love me based on what you did in the person and work of Jesus Christ, right? So please show me mercy, all right? So in the struggle, in the chaos, look back. God's been faithful. He was faithful at the cross of Christ. He was faithful to Habakkuk. He was faithful to the Israelites in Egypt. Like, never once has God not been faithful. Never once have we never walked alone. That just popped into my head, right? So there was, this is the last closing thing right here. My kids, like, you guys have been in a situation where you're at the store and you're like, you tell your parents, hey, can I have that? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to give you that right now. And so one time I was like I don't remember where I was, but they're like, hey, can I have this candy bar, or can I have this puzzle or book? It's happened so many times.
Yeah.
And be like, no, you don't need that. I'm not going to give that to you. And one time, one of my kids, they were like, well, that's okay. Miss Sandy's coming over tomorrow, and she'll get that for me. And so Miss Sandy she's like our Tucson grandma, is what we say.
Mm-hmm.
And she watches our kids every Wednesday night from the time my oldest was born. They've watched our kids every Wednesday night while core groups and stuff is happening. And she just brings over the loot of stuff every week, it's just like, what's she bringing this week or that week? And sometimes she'll tell them. And so they have this expectation, right? They have this, they presume that Miss Sandy is always going to deliver what they want. And that's the same thing. Like, that's how we can view God. Like, God is going to be there with us. We don't have to wonder if he will or if he won't be there with us. He is going to be there for us. We can presume on his faithfulness. Does that make sense? And so that's where Habakkuk is kind of coming to conclusion here in chapter 3. Next week is going to end super sweet with those last 4 verses. But again, the big idea, we can look back at God's faithfulness. And where we've seen him be faithful in the past, mainly in the work of Jesus Christ, we can be assured that he will be faithful in the present and in the future. All right? So, hey, thank you guys online for joining us. Thank you, these 3, for joining us. Make it fun. Here's what we do. We grab a penguin. Sorry, Lonnie, you can have that penguin. We throw the penguin for the little closing thing. And ready. 1, 2, 3. See you guys later!